The Cardinals are screwed. What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video. And today I'm taking a deep dive into the 2023 Arizona Cardinals. If you guys are new here, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. It's probably going to be the most entertaining part of the fact that you guys are not going to have a very good time this year. So feel free to stick around and maybe that'll make you feel a little bit better if you get to see the downfall of other teams, including some in your own division that probably some other people have been hyping up a bit. Yes, I probably already posted that video by this time. But let's go into this, going to break down the depth chart as well as look at a records prediction. So starting out with the offense, going from skill position to line, then line to skill position for the defense. We have Kyler Murray, who is going to be injured until a later portion of the year. Obviously, I love him to death, just the best abilities, availability. That's why I really don't like quarterbacks who can't stay healthy. And just in general, I'm not a huge fan of getting players who can't stay healthy. One of my pet peeves. So he's kind of one of those guys who proves it right, but I still love him to death. He was my favorite guy coming out of that draft, and, he's been a very good player, just not consistently healthy. You have Colt McCoy to back him up, which is obviously he's a great backup QB, a great mentor, just not someone who I ever would want starting on my team. I don't think he's going to be able to pull out many W's, if you guys know what I mean. Then you got James Conner there. Obviously, he's a Steelers fan. I have plenty of exposure to James Conner. I think he's fine. There's nothing special to him, in my opinion. But you got guys like Keontae Ingram behind him, who I actually like Keontae Ingram quite a bit. So you never know how that's going to turn out. Then we go to the wide receivers here. Marquise Hollywood Brown. It's no longer going to have our good old buddy DeAndre Hopkins there, but I'm not even going to discuss that because it hurts me just thinking about it. But Hollywood Brown pairing back up with Kyler Murray. Very expensive trade. It was pretty much, it was a third and no, it was a first-round pick for Marquise and a third from the Ravens. And it's going to be expensive. I don't really think it's worth it. But you know what? The regime went all in on trying to make Kyler Murray as comfortable as possible. I'm not really going to blame them too much for that. Then you got Rondale Moore, who I thought was really spectacular when healthy. Hasn't really been able to hit his full stride yet, but that very well might happen this year because I think this offense is going to be a lot more quick passes, and I think Rondale Moore is exactly the type of guy who should capitalize on that. Greg Dortch honestly has been pretty damn solid too. Can't really blame him at all. He's a pretty good player, man. I'm not going to try to shame him. Then we got some notable backups in that wide receiver room. You got Michael Wilson, who is a third-round selection, I believe, which is great because, he has all the talent in the world, but very similar to what you've had before. Injuries are a bitch, and then they end up keeping you off the field, and then you can't perform. But when on the field, this guy is easily probably a first-round selection. He does have the athletic ability, he has the polish, he has the hands. He's a really good player. Just can't stay healthy, which is why he was probably drafted where he was. Zach Pascal coming from Philadelphia as well to this team to stay with Gannon is awesome because I really do like Zach Pascal. Now, looking at the offensive line, actually, let's look at the tight end first because I'm still talking about weapons. Zach Ertz, awesome. Then you got Trey McBride there too. I think it's a very good position. It's just not much star power anymore. I don't think Zach Ertz is the guy who he was at the top of his career there in Philadelphia, but still is a good player nonetheless. DJ Humphries, I think, is solid enough. They drafted Paris Johnson to probably be a replacement for Beachum or him. But right now, this is according to our lads. So, again, I'm just going to parrot what they have right at the moment. Paris Johnson's listed as that left guard, but we all know he is going to be a long-term tackle replacement. Hjalte Froholt is going to be the center, again, according to our lads. Feel free to correct it down below. But right now, I follow 32 teams, and, that's just one of the more consistent sources of information. So I'm going to be following that until shown otherwise. You got Will Hernandez there, who is not the same guy who I thought he was. Unfortunately, he's just not that good of a player. And you got Kelvin Beachum there at right tackle, another one of my former Steelers, who he's just getting older, unfortunately. But you guys did get John Gaines in the draft. Overall, solid team. I don't think Hjalte's that great. I don't think Will Hernandez is that great. I don't think Kelvin Beachum is necessarily that special, and there's a reason why Kyler continues to get injured. I don't think this team has invested enough in the O-line, and this past draft showed it because they started drafting O-line, which is great. Good for you guys. I think this team is definitely on the up. I don't think it's as dire as you believe or as much as you hear, but you're a couple pieces away from actually being able to compete again. Then we're looking at the defense here. I'm probably one of the bigger believers in this defense than anybody else in the entire world. Let's just call it as it is. But when we're looking at this, we have the defensive line, Rashard Lawrence, who's okay. Lecky Fotu's ass. I'm just going to be honest, I should have put him as part of the worst unit. Same thing with Ledbetter. Both of them are just cheeks. Not a huge fan of them. The outside linebackers, I think, are probably the best. Your edge rushers, Cam Thomas, I was a big fan of him. I thought that he was George Karlaftis with worse conditioning, and he ended up doing pretty solid last year, about 10% pressure rate, which is not great, but that's not on true pass rushing sets. That's just every single time. And that was a head calculation. I just saw the amount of pass rush reps versus the amount of pressures he got. Myjai Sanders was one of my favorite dudes from last year's class as well, or a little bit over a year ago. And he even had 17 pressures last year. So, it's not all lost there. I think that they definitely have that first step, and I think they'll continue taking it. But then you got BJ Ojulari there, who is my number 7 overall player from last year's class. And he is awesome. I think he'll end up potentially taking a lot of reps from Myjai. But you guys have gotten 2 of my guys at the edge rushing position, technically 3 with Cam Thomas there. And I think that in the long run, it's going to pay off. Then you got Zaven Collins there, linebacker from Tulsa. He didn't take a step up last year, but he did end up having a little bit better of a missed tackle percentage. He's just not necessarily 100% there. Kaiser White is going to be a nice guy to bring in who has familiarity with Gannon's system. Then you got Isaiah Simmons. I'll include him in this list because he's probably going to be a linebacker flex nickel. And, he's just somebody who's a really, really intriguing player to play with. I hope to God we finally find a role for him, but we'll see. It just felt, we all knew when he was drafted, he was either going to be the most confusing player to put in the right position or the easiest. And it ends up being the most confusing, unfortunately. Buda Baker is an absolute monster. Requested a trade from the team. Don't really fully blame him personally, especially with all the stuff that's been going on, but we'll see what happens with him. And then Jalen Thompson's honestly a pretty solid dude, very reliable, low missed tackle percentage there at 3.5. Then we go to the corners. Antonio Hamilton just ended off the year really well, but he shouldn't be a boundary corner who's starting in the NFL. And same thing with Marco Wilson, but at least Marco got considerably better as the year progressed. Other notable names, you got LJ Collier there, Dante Stills on the defensive line. Already mentioned BJ Ojulari, Owen Papo backing up at linebacker with his 4.39 speed, which is crazy. And then I believe he was a 3rd-round addition. Not Greedy. Wow, I can't even out of Syracuse, Williams. I keep wanting to say Greedy Williams. It's the word that's escaping my mind. Doesn't really matter. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Garrett Williams there from Syracuse. One of my guys just ended up getting injured. He was a top 15 player on my board before doing so. So that is going to be the depth chart. Let's go into the schedule here. 2-15, but it really depends on when Kyler returns. Similar to the Niners. It's just God only knows when y'all are returning. It could end up being, week 14, which is when I project him to come back, because who the hell wants to come back in, week 10? Like that's tough. That's tough. So I'm having him come back in week 14. If he comes back in week 10, I think you guys win a couple more games. I don't think that's a good thing. I think you guys should just try to lose out, get Marvin Harrison Jr. in there, have some fun. But regardless, you end up going with this. You end up losing out until week 10, game by game. Washington's a good team out the gate. Again, they have a good defense, and with Colt McCoy, I just don't have enough trust there. It's really the big factor in all of these games. Like New York, they're a team that overachieved like hell last year, but they're still a good enough franchise with a great head coach. I think that's definitely going to set them apart. Dallas is a Super Bowl competitor. San Fran is San Fran. They're able to make the most with not very much, or, they end up making a monster defense and then end up stealing a bunch of dudes elsewhere. They just find a way to win regardless. Then you got Cincinnati, who's another Super Bowl competitor. Los Angeles, who I think is absolute butt cheeks, but this is the one time where the offense is good enough, but the defense is crap, and I just don't trust Colt McCoy to take advantage of that. Seattle is a juggernaut. We'll talk about them later this week. Baltimore is another Super Bowl competitor. Cleveland, if they get hit correctly, is going to be a Super Bowl competitor as well. Atlanta, they're a tough team. They're a gritty squad. I like their defense quite a bit, and they have a really good run game. And with Lecky Fotu manning the middle versus Chris Lindstrom, I don't like it one bit. Then you have Houston, who I still think is honestly going to be a talented franchise, just is not fully there yet. Los Angeles, again, already talked about them. I think that at this point, you are going to, I think you guys get one game at least. I know you guys lose usually at home, so you guys can flip the games if you want to. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Then you go to Pittsburgh. That's a gritty team. I obviously am a Steelers fan, so I'll stick up for my Steelers, but they're a very talented team nonetheless. Then you go into the bye week. Then I have you guys coming back with Kyler Murray, who ends up winning 1 out of the last 3 because you go up against San Fran. Ugh. Then you go to Chicago, which is still cold. Could have had you guys lose out right there. Philadelphia is a juggernaut. And then Seattle, again, another one of those really hard to beat teams. You guys have a tough schedule. You really do. You have LA in there. That's kind of the easy team to beat. And I'm having you guys take a flyer on Chicago because I do think Kyler is a very good quarterback. But it's a very tough one to win. And at least you're not as bad as the Rams. So take that at least. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.